All right, George, we're just waiting for Isis, but maybe we can go ahead and give her a couple of more minutes, and maybe in the meanwhile, George, you can say a couple of words.
Sure. Welcome, everyone. My name is Dr. George Sanchez. I am the faculty coordinator of the Mellon Mays program here at the University of Southern California. I want to welcome everyone to this annual event where we celebrate our graduating seniors from the Mellon Mays program and have them tell us a little bit about their research that they've done here at USC. I'm going to start off by talking a little bit about the program, particularly for the parents and the siblings who may not know about the program, even though I'm sure your children did tell you a few things about it. And I'm going to just ask that everybody keep themselves muted while you're here, just so that we don't hear all the background noise. And we're going to have 6 students present. So let me share my screen and just tell you a little bit about our program. Okay, so again, we are the Mellon Mays Undergraduate Fellowship Program here at USC. This is a national program that's funded by the Andrew W. Mellon Foundation out of New York City, but we are one of about 45 different campuses that get this funding. I'm the faculty director. I'm a faculty member both in American Studies and Ethnicity and History. The staff coordinator is Disha Mahendra, who works here at the Dornsife office. And then we have these 6 students who are graduating with us this year. We normally have about 10 students in the program, about half are seniors, half are juniors. Just the basics of the program. We support research for all the students in the program from the time that they're selected until their graduation. We pay them to do this research both during the school year, but also in the summer. And our expectation is they'll continue to do the research, and you'll hear a little bit about their research today. We try to encourage them to find their mentors, not only while they're at USC, but in the future as they continue. And most of them have written a senior thesis or a major project of some sort. One of the features of this program, which is a little different than a lot of other programs that they might be involved in, is that once you're selected into it, essentially you never leave. We consider you a Mellon Fellow for the rest of your life. And we hope that you will become a faculty member in your Mellon field. But that means that we will support you, and the program supports you if you go on to graduate school, if you go on to get a PhD, and if you become a faculty member. So we have that kind of expectation. And one of the things I like to tell parents at this point is that we know very well that each of your children can become faculty members. This is one of the things I'm more certain of than anything else in relationship to the program. Whether they do or not depends on them and depends on their choice, but we're certain that they have the academic chops and the abilities to do that. And you might ask, so what does it take to become a faculty member? When I was growing up, neither of my parents went to college. I didn't know what it took, but this is what we tell them, and I really believe this, that if you find a research topic that you enjoy, you spend a lot of years in discovery of that, you're willing to write and to share your writing with others, and you're interested in conveying knowledge to others through teaching, through publishing, and through mentorship, becoming a faculty member is totally possible, especially for those who are committed to service in higher education, reaching out and expanding the diversity in their respective fields. So it's really about more school, which I think is a shocker for most parents as they approach graduation. But it's about entering the life of the mind more broadly and in their entire profession. When I said once a Mellon, always a Mellon, what I meant is that if students go on to graduate school, there's a whole variety of other funding that they have access to when they're graduate students. There's summer conferences, seminars for writing proposals and their dissertation, for all kinds of writing that you do at the graduate level, preparing to enter the professoriate at the end of that. And there's even funding for pre-doctoral research grants and other sorts of lectures. And while they're graduate students, they will also get supported with travel and research grants, dissertation grants. There's gap assistance for those that are not going straight from college to PhD work, help that we can provide in that interim period. And then finally, there's career enhancement fellowships, even when they're junior faculty hired by another university. So all these things continue, and we always see them as only part way through the program at this point, even though they're graduating. This gives you, as of 2013, a sense of what impact this program is having on faculty. These are the completed PhDs. 390 in 2013 were still junior faculty, 89 were tenured. These numbers have now increased pretty dramatically. It has a real impact on university faculty of the future. And this gives you a sense of the way we think about it. We're way down here at this end, celebrating graduation. And you can see that the program continues through PhD programs after the doctorate is conferred, and then on to faculty members. So again, we just want you to know about the full extent of this, and I think that's really important. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and introduce a couple of people to you that also are vital to the program. Let me start with Disha Mahendra, who's the staff coordinator. Disha.
Hi, everybody. It's so nice to see all of your faces. This is my second Mellon graduation, and it's also virtual. Believe it or not, I haven't met any of these students, but I am deeply inspired by each and every one of them from this year's cohort, our last cohort that graduated last semester, our new incoming cohort. I see some of you here also. I can't wait to see you all in person, hopefully for your graduations. But I'm really thankful for this opportunity to be able to work with you all. And it's really inspiring to see all of the research you all have done. And I'm just really excited for you all to present to your friends and families and mentors today. And I'm so happy I've been able to be part of your journeys, and congratulations. You all are going to diversify the Academy in ways you have no idea of yet. And I just cannot wait to be part of your journeys as you continue on in the Academy. And with that, I'll introduce Dean Freeman so she can say a couple of words as well, and then we'll go ahead and get started.
Thank you, Disha, and thank you, Dr. Sanchez. Both of you play such an important role in really extending this pipeline and making sure that our Mellon Mays Fellows receive the support that they need, not only while they're on campus at USC, but beyond their time at USC. And so it's a pleasure to work with both of you, and congratulations to all of the graduating seniors. I figured it would be important to say a few words in the spirit of Dr. Benjamin Mays, who, as you know, this fellowship is named after. And I know you've heard this poem before, but it seems so fitting at commencement time to read it to you again. I have only just a minute, only 60 seconds in it, forced upon me, can't refuse it, didn't seek it, didn't choose it, but it's up to me to use it. I must suffer if I lose it, give account if I abuse it. Just a tiny little minute, but eternity is in it. You all have spent just a tiny bit of your academic career here at USC, and I wish you so much more success as you go on to diversify the Academy. As Disha said, you make us proud, and I look forward to hearing all your wonderful success stories as you go out into the world. Thank you.
Elisa, would you like to say some words too?
Yeah, I'll say a little bit in English and then también hablaré en español para todos y todas que tal vez están aquí, hablo hispantes. And my name is Elisa Sanchez, and I work with the students to support their writing, and that continues as they're applying to graduate school and beyond. And just huge congratulations to everyone graduating. So excited for you, and it's such a privilege to be able to see your growth and how you have really grown into the scholars that you are from all the way back during interviews, right? Just that trajectory. So sí, soy Elisa Sánchez, soy una asesora, ayudo con todo lo que hay que escribir con los estudiantes. Y voy a seguir trabajando con los estudiantes después de que se gradúa. So estaré aquí siempre. Y muchas felicidades, muchas felicidades. Es un gran placer poder trabajar con ustedes y poder ser testiga a todo lo que han hecho. Muchas gracias. And good job, everyone.
Thank you, Elisa. And with that, we will save some time at the end for some words for mentors and families and friends, but we'll go ahead and get started with our presentations. If you all just give me a moment, we're going to start with Rosa. I'm just going to be sharing my screen. Rosa, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you everyone for your kind words. So hi everyone, my name is Rosa Noriega Rocha, and I use she, her pronouns. Today I'll be presenting a bit on the work that I've dedicated my undergraduate career here at USC. So we can go on to the next slide. And just as a quick overview, I'll be giving you all some background information about myself and my trajectory. And then I'll move on to talk a little bit about my method / my approach to this project. And I hope to also share with you all some of my findings thus far, and of course, my plans for future work. Okay, so we'll start with the background. We can go on to the next slide. So first and foremost, I do want to start out by saying that I was born in Watsonville, California, which is located in the Central Coast Valley. And of course, the Central Coast is the top producer of berries in the world, and thus, in my opinion, a crucial place to highlight when speaking about the experiences of farm workers. And I would also like to mention that I myself come from generations of farm workers, and thus I hold very near and dear to my heart the experiences of my family. And of course, I myself have witnessed a lot of the effects of the exploitative nature of this work. And I would also like to note that Watsonville, apart from being my hometown, right, it's a very crucial space to analyze in my studies, as its ethnic composition is about 80% Latinx, and I'll talk a little bit more about this and why it's important later on in my presentation, but I do want you all to keep this figure in mind, right? So 80% is a large figure, so yeah. And then some of the questions that I grounded my work in are as follows. So what makes a farm worker vulnerable to sexual harassment? And more recently, the second question, how are the experiences of Indigenous farm workers different from that of their non-Indigenous counterparts? This question was very important for me, especially analyzing a place like that of Watsonville. But yeah, I guess we can go on to the next one. Okay, so in order to best address the questions that I initially had at the beginning of this journey, I sought out what I perceived to be some of the most ethical research methods in my first project, which was my senior honors thesis that I finished my junior year at USC, was grounded in 3 case studies that I conducted amongst women that I knew, right? All of the 3 women that I wrote about were either, I mean, one of them was my mom, one of them was my friend, and the other one was also a friend of mine. However, conducting that work, I quickly found that there is no such thing as conducting ethical research, right? And at the moment I accepted this, at the moment that I accepted this, right, that there was no such thing as ethicalness in research, I've started to turn my research and my work into community-based work. And I think that that's the stage that I'm in right now, right? As of current, my main method has and continues to be engaged in mutual aid work. And mutual aid work, as many of you know, has been practiced amongst colonized and displaced individuals all over the world. And, you know, amidst the global pandemic, I think that we as a society have begun to see the impacts of mutual aid. And, you know, as a result of this, in my own hometown, I saw that a group of current and former farm workers, a group of current and former farm workers organized themselves to create what is now known as an organization called the Sol a Sol Colectiva. And, you know, this is a collective that I joined. So I think we can go on to the next slide. And over my tenure with this coalition, I have devoted myself to various things. I first started to work with them to fundraise and distribute cash grants to Indigenous farm working women in Watsonville. Through this work, I have, of course, engaged with many of the women, and I would like to share some of the things that I have found. As mentioned before, this collective is run and organized by current and former farm workers only. So they're very specific about who they let into their circle. I mean, I'm very surprised that they let me in. And this being said, everyone in this collective understands that Indigenous undocumented farm workers are discriminated against in every aspect, right? In my own findings and in my initial case study that I spoke to you all about briefly. And of course, from speaking to the women that I encountered via this group in this work, I found that undocumented Indigenous farm working women are not only more vulnerable to gendered violence, but they're also vulnerable to racialization by their non-Indigenous supervisors and peers, right? And as a result of this, all of the monies that we raised in this collective prioritizes Indigenous farm working women. And something else that I would like to share with you all is that that came out of this work, right? And also my initial case study is that I found that children of farm workers are oftentimes disregarded, right? So apart from providing farm workers with cash relief, this collective has also done a lot for the children of farm workers. And, despite Watsonville being the berry capital of the world, Pajaro Valley Unified School District, which is the largest school district in Watsonville, tends to be very disconnected from the challenges of students who come from farm working backgrounds. And, collectives like that of the Sol a Sol Colectiva have taken it amongst themselves to advocate for children of farm workers at every level. And those of us who attend a university tend to engage in the actual politics of the school board and utilize our privilege to demand that the board acknowledges the ways in which they contribute to the exploitation of farm working youth, because I think that a lot of the times we don't make that connection, right? And I guess an example of that is that most recently, because of the global pandemic, a lot of school counselors at PBUSC were saying that graduation rates were at an all-time low right now. And of course, this was attributed to a lot of the inequalities that came as a result of virtual learning. And I think it was something like only 65% of our students were on track to graduating, when, you know, just keep in mind the majority of the students in this school district come from farm working backgrounds. I think it's something like 70 to 80% of them. And so the fact that only 60% were on track to graduation, right, just did not sit well with us, because, you know, it didn't sit well with us, especially when we found out that the school board was still upholding graduation requirements that were higher than that of the state of California. And this is relevant because we understand that, you know, not graduating from high school leaves children of farm workers with very little employment options, and in fact contributes to the cycle of poverty. So yeah. And I guess the other observation that I would like to make note of that came as a result of my most recent work is that it's very difficult to do this work without replicating a white savior complex. And at the beginning, you know, I'll give you an example. At the beginning of the pandemic, I think my hometown was very much highlighted because of, you know, there was this movement in which people were finally starting to view farm workers as essential, right? I think there was a whole movement behind that. I mean, it came a little late, but right, there was people that were finally able to grasp that understanding. And in my hometown, there was a group of well-intentioned people, I believe, that, you know, sought to go into the agricultural fields and provide farm workers with, you know, little things like water and household essentials like laundry detergent and so forth. And during the beginning of the pandemic, obviously, this was something that was very much sought after, right? But, you know, these people, these groups are run by people who, one, had no connection to farm worker, or, you know, if they did, they were generations removed, and two, people who jumped on this movement to paint themselves as organizers for the sake of getting public acknowledgement, right? And as you all can imagine, there's something so problematic about co-opting the work of people who are actively trying to liberate and empower farm workers. And it just didn't sit well with me, right? And so, yeah, so I think these are some of the findings that I have, or that I wanted to share with you all in terms of like my own involvement with this group. And I guess, I don't know, like, I do believe that farm workers are the soul of this world, and their liberation will not come as a result of well-intentioned people who play by respectability politics. And, you know, in order to properly show your allyship with the people who feed this nation, we must, you know, leverage our institutional power and our capital to ensure their survival, right? And I forgot to add this slide here, but as for my future work, I do plan on continuing this work. And I mean, like I just said, I believe that research is very colonial in nature, and of course exploitative. And I really don't want to engage in this unless it is to study white people. So I think that my future work will look at non-Indigenous mayordomos and supervisors and how their behavior contributes to the marginalization of Indigenous farm working women. So I think that my whole undergraduate career, I spent time trying to fight myself, right? And because I really wanted to understand the experiences of Indigenous farm working women through their eyes, but I never really saw the need to look at our own people, right? Look at, well, my own people, non-Indigenous Mexican people, and how the ways in which we contribute to the exploitation of these people. So I think that as for my future work, I really plan on focusing in on that. But yeah, I think we can go on to the next one. So I guess just an acknowledgement slides. I would like to give special acknowledgement to Dr. Sanchez, to my community, and of course, all of my Mellon colleagues for your continuous support throughout this journey, which was, it was definitely a roller coaster for me to get here. But yeah,
Rosa, can you say a word about what you'll be doing in the fall?
Oh, I think I alluded to it, but I'm going to be doing research at the University of Michigan in the sociology department.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rosa. Congratulations again. We, like I said, we'll be doing, we'll be giving space and time for mentors, family, and friends at the end. So in the meanwhile, we will move on to Kasaya. And Kasaya, you should have share screen. I know you wanted to, there you go. Perfect.
All right. I'm going to assume everyone can see the screen and can hear me. And if you can't, please just let me know. Hello, everyone. My name is Kasaya Elzina Jeffries, and for 3 more days, I am a senior at USC, majoring in law, history, and culture, and minoring in gender and social justice. And I would like to begin my presentation by briefly presenting my senior thesis, which has been the focus of my work as a Mellon. So the poetry of Lucille Clifton functions as subheadings and transitions in my thesis. So before continuing with the presentation, I'd like to read one of her poems. I'm accused of tending to the past as if I made it, as if I sculpted it with my own hands. I did not. This past was waiting for me when I came, a monstrous unnamed baby. And I, with my mother's itch, took it to breast and named it history. She is more human now, learning languages every day, remembering faces, names, and dates. When she is strong enough to travel on her own, beware, she will. My senior thesis is titled We've Been New, an ode to Black women bearing witness and bearing history through poetry. It is a theoretical interdisciplinary project in Black studies which seeks to unveil the constructed and fictitious status of history and the archive in order to muddle the dichotomy between historical truth and fictional narratives. It also attempts to map out power relations in the archive to find better tools and methods for studying Black women, especially for studying Black women throughout history. It does so by arguing that the constructive nature of the archive and historical narratives produced from its material scraps are comparable to the fictitious writing of poetry. It also argues that the poetry of Black women, works of fiction, can at times be more true and real than what the archive can produce. By reading and critiquing history in the archive in relation to Black women, We've Been New argues that Edward Glissant's concept of the right to opacité provides an alternative explanation for the absence of Black women in traditional archives, granting Black women agency and humanity that alternative explanations and methods for recovery fail to. The common reason for Black women's archival absence, which is true, is that the perspectives of Black women were ignored and neglected by archivists. This neglect occurred because Black women were first unhuman objects that were murdered for attempting to read and write, which is necessary for producing archival documents. Post-emancipation, Black feminine perspectives challenged the narrative the archive tried to tell. However, I argue that in addition to being purged and blocked from the archive, Black women have simply chosen to be absent from the archive. Many have chosen to document themselves through alternative methods, including poetry and literature, which should be respected as legitimate historical sources. Chapter 1 is titled Redacted, and it examines the current position of Black women in the archive and the struggle of historians to piece together narratives that capture the humanity and agency of Black women. In doing so, it also investigates the violence of the archive and the presumed unarchivability faced by Black women who find themselves in the archive and those who remain omitted. I argue that this results from the rupture of Black people from history and humanity through enslavement and the Middle Passage, and the empirical origins and colonial implications of the project that was and is the archive. In this context, the absence of Black women from the archive and our occasional presence are acts of intentional imperial and colonial violence. Chapter 2 is titled Recovery, which presents current methods for reviving Black women and our history from archival scraps. These are critical fabulation and rememory. We've Been New sees these concepts as useful but insufficient at reclaiming Black women's lives from the wake of the archive. Instead, Chapter 2 presents Glissant's theory of opacité as an alternative explanation of our absence. In addition to Black women being violently excluded and erased from the archive, Black women have a right to opacité, to be absent, to represent themselves otherwise. Chapter 3 is titled Reconstruction, and it examines the current understandings of history and archives and how those understandings developed. It then challenges these understandings with a postmodern interpretation of history and the archive as sites of power and violence. It interrogates ideas of objectivity, stability, and historical truth, arguing that history, like poetry and literature, constructs narratives, blurring the line between historical truths and fictional narratives, which weakens the authority of the archive and universal narratives of history. Using this, I justify poetry as a form of historical documentation. That's my thesis in a nutshell. And now I would like to talk about some other things I've done at USC with the rest of my time. So while at USC, I studied abroad in Paris, France, where I was able to study and research Black artists and activists. I also studied abroad in Valencia, Spain, where I was able to study the Spanish language and immigration issues, as well as research the history of Black folks in Spain and the constructed perspectives of Blackness as criminal. I also interned with Inner City Law Center and the Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office in their wrongful conviction review unit and their sex crimes unit. I was also able to serve as a leader and build amazing community as an in-person and a virtual RA. Pictured as my entire staff team stuffed in an elevator and the door decks that I spent way too long making. So thank you to USC Residential Education, especially my Cowlings and Ilium team, for an amazing 2 years. Thank you, Morgan Benson, for guiding me, believing in me, and teaching me to be a leader and role model for my residents. I would also like to thank my Student Assembly for Gender Empowerment and Black Student Assembly families. I was a general member of these organizations for most of my time at SC, and I served as the co-director of special events for BSA during my sophomore year and just ended my term as co-executive director of SAGE. Thank you, Alexia and Suli, for being welcoming, supportive, and for giving me one of my favorite memories at USC with our event with Chanel Miller that we hosted last month. Thank you for making my year at Zoom University meaningful and purposeful. I spent most of my free time at the Center for Black Cultural and Student Affairs, where I helped to found Sisters in Solidarity, a community for Black women, femme, and non-binary folks. On the left-hand side is a picture from our first meeting. Thank you, Jaya, for working alongside me to create this home for me and many other students. I was also able to find a home and community in the CBCSA, where I worked as the signature event specialist for 2 years. Thank you to my CBCSA family, especially the previous leaders, Dr. Theo Fowles and Dr. Rosalind Connerly, who are pictured in the top. I don't know if you can see my cursor, but the top two up there. Thank you both for seeing me and being a home for me on campus. Thank you for teaching me to find and make homes wherever I go after you left. Thank you for caring for me and being excited for all of my adventures. Also, my thesis and pretty much all of my future research is dedicated to Victor Mcelhaney, who is in the middle with the gray jacket on. He was murdered during his senior year at SC and days after I was selected to be a Mellon Mays Fellow. And he was more excited than I was about me being selected as a fellow. So I just wanted to acknowledge him. I would also like to thank my academic USC community of the Mellon Mays Undergraduate Fellowship Program, who believed in me and my thesis from its earliest stages and created space for me to discover what it was. Thank you for seeing me as a scholar and convincing me to see the same. Thank you, Jack, Sam, Rosa, Mary, Kat, Akande, Lupe, Kathy, Brianna, Jabrea, Volante, Joe, Isis, Kim, and Emmy. I'm honored to call you all colleagues and peers. Thank you, Akande, for introducing me to my thesis advisor and Mellon Mays mentor, Dr. Elena Morgan. Thank you, Dr. Morgan, for your constant reassurance and helping me to figure out what my project was and helping me to make it that. Thank you for building me up and also telling me when I was doing way too much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Also, thank you, Disha and Rizzy, for your logistical assistance and coordination. Thank you, Dr. Sanchez, Dr. George Sanchez, for selecting me for the program and mentoring me throughout my research project. And thank you, Dr. Elisa Sanchez, for getting me to start writing instead of just thinking many thoughts, and for always being excited for whatever I had written, both in, both in my thesis and my graduate school applications. Thank you for your kindness, your time, your questions, and your patience. I also want to thank my Harvard-Westlake community where I went to high school, which is where I believe that my love for feminist theory started, was mostly through the debate team and the community that I had there, as well as some not so positive experiences with history, which taught me to question how history is taught and what true history is. So I would like to thank my high school dean, Chris Jones, and my friends, Anya Isabel Andrews and Angelica Estrada, for supporting me during that time. Also, for their constant love, guidance, support, and sacrifice, I'd like to thank God, my ancestors, and my family, both chosen in blood, both living and past. There are too many to name, but I'd like to thank a few people in particular. Thank you, Mom and Dad. Desi Senegal Jeffries is my mom, and Ratni Jeffries is my dad. Thank you to my two younger sisters, Kanya Jeffries and Kaya Jeffries. Thank you to my Uncle Alex and my Uncle Donald Lee and my Aunt Sandra. And also thank you to my Uncle Anthony. Thank you to my grandparents, Morris Jeffries and Ernestine Jeffries, as well as Desi Senegal and Alex Senegal. I also want to thank my great-grandma Elzina, who I got my middle name after, and my godmother, Sonia Wiley, for watching me present this project repeatedly. This thesis and my USC degree are for you and would be impossible without you. I love you all, and I thank you for loving me. Finally, I'm almost done. I am graduating from USC as a Black Alumni Association Scholar and a Presidential Scholar. I was the 2020 recipient of the Schaefer Fellowship in Government Service and received the Tedesco Scholarship in Gender and Sexuality Studies and the Fuch Merit Award for my research. In my final 2 years, I received the Black Alumni Association's Leon Kane Scholarship for my dedication to the Black community and interest in law and social justice. I am a member of the Alpha Delta Lambda and Phi Beta Kappa Honor Societies, and upon graduating from USC, I will be designated as a Dornsife Scholar, which is the highest recognition awarded by the USC Dornsife to graduating students for outstanding contributions to the life of the college. I am graduating with University and History Departmental Honors and was awarded the Interdisciplinary Prize in Humanities at USC's Symposium, as well as the USC Discovery Scholar Distinction for my senior thesis. And in the fall, I will be studying at UC Irvine, concurrently completing a PhD in Culture and Theory and a JD, which is a law degree. I hope to become a civil and human rights lawyer, serving and advocating for marginalized communities and victims of violence, but I'm also very interested in conducting academic research that highlights the perspectives and experiences of Black women. Ultimately, I hope to serve as a university professor while running a pro bono law clinic through the university. And these are my dogs, and they're amazing. So thank you for your time.
Woo, Kasaya! We're so proud of you. Congratulations again. I love seeing all those photos. I feel like even though I've never met you in person, I just like know all about your life and your family now, and I love it. And I can't wait to hear about what you do when you get to UCI, because we'll definitely be bringing you back to talk to our current students. Okay, we're gonna move on. We're gonna get to Kimberly Mogoza, and I'm gonna share my screen for Kim. So just give me another second.
That is. Cool. So I'll start. My name is Kimberly Mogoza, and I'm graduating from a Bachelor's of Religion this upcoming May, which is in 3 days, which is crazy. You can move on to the next slide. So who am I? I grew up all over LA, South Central, Compton, Downey, Bell Gardens, Bell, you name it. Ever since I was in 8th grade, like I visited the campus one time and it was just my dream school since then. I came into USC actually as a neuroscience major, pre-med student. It was a little bit rough. The chemistry and biology, it was a little bit hard, but it's okay. Then I took my first religion class in spring 2018, my freshman year, on death and the meaning of life. I did not think it was going to be about religion, but after that class, I added the minor in religion. I just really liked it, and I kept telling all my friends, like, oh, I know everything about religion. Not everything, but like I know about this religion now, and I just kept telling everybody, and I was like, this is kind of really interesting. And then the class that changed my life, quite literally, was Drugs, Alcohol, Visions, and Altered States in Religion with my now mentor, James McHugh. That class showed me that I can include my 2 passions, one religion and medicine together. So I changed my major to religion, and after a couple months, I decided to change my trajectory in life and decided to become a religion professor who studies the use of hallucinogenic drugs religiously in the Americas, mainly Latin America. You can move on to the next slide. So what is my research? At the end of this semester, I completed an 85-page compilation of all my research, which is crazy, 85 pages. I never thought I could write 85 pages. My interest started with Mesoamerica on my first paper on the history of pulque in Mexico. Pulque is an intoxicating beverage. It is traced back to the 1000 AD in Mexico. It was used by the Mayans. They became intoxicated to the point of unconsciousness, entering the underworld for a brief moment. It was also used by the Aztecs. In my second paper, it was on ayahuasca in South America. I wrote about the rituals, but I mainly focused on tourism and the religious aspect because it's super connected to like tourism in that sense. And then I wrote my honors thesis in spring 2020 on the history of hallucinogenic mushrooms in Mexico. I did it with Professor McHugh. I focused on how old the hallucinogenic mushrooms were and how they're used in rituals today. I compared mushrooms from the old world to the new world, and I found that the ones that I was studying actually originated in the new world. And I mentioned how mushrooms are used today, especially like recreationally. You can move on to the next slide. And last summer, I wrote on marijuana used by Rastafarians. I focused on the law aspect of marijuana and how that affects its religious use. I explained how marijuana is used religiously, especially in a world like today where it's actually illegal. And then last spring, I focused on legal aspects of many of these drugs used religiously because I saw a pattern on how many were getting legalized. And this semester, I actually changed my trajectory a little bit. I wrote about Santa Muerte cult. Santa Muerte is connected to a lot of like narcos, violence, and crime. But I showed how it is also a religion and how she works her powers. I decided to focus on this because many of the religions I researched are actually not seen as authentic and are like outsiders. So I wanted to like give a little light to that. So I think I want to continue my research and focus on small religions rather than like traditional ones and give them the light. You can move on to the next slide. So what's next? You can move on to the next one. So I'm actually going to go to Yale Divinity School. I'm going to get my master's in religious, focused on Latin America. It's kind of across the country. It's pretty exciting. And after that, I want to continue my studies and get a PhD in religion. Yeah, so can you move on to the next slide? But I had to mention some people. I would not have gotten to where I am today without a couple people. So my mom and my dad, I had to include this picture because that was 4 years ago. And it's just like crazy how time flies. And like now this is 4 years later, and that's my mom and my dad. I wouldn't have gotten here without you guys. I know that it's been like a journey and you're always here for me. So I'm glad that you support me and all the changes that I made. I know I changed from pre-med to like religion, but here I am. The next one, please. So my sister Jen, which is right here, I would not have gotten here. She's like my second mom. She's always supporting me on anything I want to do. So I would not have been here without you. Thank you so much for supporting me. Next one. So my niece Scarlett and my little sister Monse, they're camera shy, so they're in the room. But
I'm just glad that I can be a role model for them, and hopefully they can fall into my footsteps and continue on with going to college. And I know we're first gen, but they can also, if I can do it, they can do it too. And I'm just happy for them. Next slide. My brother-in-law, Raul, he's right there. He's always there for me. He's always there for me, and he's always supporting me. I know I'm very stubborn, but we have a good time. So thank you for always being there for me in my corner. My next slide. So my best friend, Desi, she couldn't make it today, but she's always been there for me. She's also a religion major. She's actually want to be a lawyer. I'm so happy to have a friend like her. We're both first gen, and it's always nice to have someone going through the same struggles as you. So I'm happy for that. Next slide. My friend, Joe, who's also a Mellon Mays Fellow. I've never even met him in person because of COVID. We met last summer, but we have yet to meet up. We're gonna visit each other when we go to our PhD programs or master's programs, and just, we'll get there. We'll meet each other, and I'm so happy to have you. We text like almost every day about anything, so I'm so happy to have met you. Next slide. My mentor, James McHugh. I just got this picture off Dornsive. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm happy to have met you. Your class literally changed my life. I didn't know I could do medicine and religion, so I'm really happy that I took your class and I know what I want to study now, and I'll always keep contact with you. So thank you so much for always being there for me. And obviously there's so many people I want to thank, but my Topping family, my Mellon Mays family, George, you're always there for me. Disha, you're always available. I always text you. Elisa, thank you so much for helping me with my applications to applying to grad school. I didn't know how to do that, but we got there, we did it. Now I'm going to grad school, and there's so many more people. And then the next slide. Eventually I will get my PhD in religion and become a professor, and hopefully inspire the next generations to come. And the next slide is just a picture of my graduation, some graduation pictures. Yeah, thank you.
Kim, I know you just won a big award from the Topping program.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so I got the Ron McDuffie Award from Topping. So it's about service, academics, and community service. Yeah, all of that. So I got that award this past week. April 29th, I got it. So that was actually exciting. I was not expecting that, but I always continue to do volunteer work. I actually still volunteer online and like with people who have mental health problems. So like I'm always there as a listener. So I always give back my time.
Congratulations again, Kim. And I will still always be here for you via text after you go on to Yale. I got like so teary-eyed during your presentation. I'm really, really proud of you. You were one of the first students I admitted to the program. So I'm excited to see what comes for you. Now Akande, I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen for him. It's a PDF, so you'll have to just bear with me for a second. Okay. You there, Akande?
Yeah, I'm right here. Thank you for having me. It's great to be here, and so great to be able to celebrate with everyone. Yeah, my name is Akande. I graduated in December of 2020 with a degree in philosophy, and that's partly why I use this sort of cheeky question as a first slide, because it reminds me of a refrain by the Romanian philosopher Mcelhaney, who was being celebrated in Zurich, and everyone was celebrating him, and he just said to everything, "Mais je ne suis qu'un déconneur," which translates to, "But I'm just a joker." And yeah, anyways, could I have the next slide, please? So yeah, I want to give thanks to professors that I've met at USC who are mentors, and just people who've been really important to me. Particularly Professor Edgardo Perez Morales, who is just one of the most brilliant people I've ever met. His class changed my life to this day. It was one of the best classes I think I've had at USC. Professors Vavellen, Morgan, Fisher, Beauvais, like those are sort of my mentors, and I feel bad because I wasn't quite the best mentee, but I felt, if anything, I got a lot for just how to be a professor from, from them, and a lot of like just great advice just in general about what it in the academy. I'd like to give thanks to my grandmother, who I had the pleasure of living with during my 2 years at USC, my mother and my brother, Tom and James of Excellent Books, because they were really my sort of social life while I was there. I didn't really have a ton of friends at USC, but they were two older men that I started working with, and I love them a lot. So, you know, I want to give a big thanks to the USC Mellon Mays administration. You know, Disha, Elisa, Cassandra, Rissy, Debbie, you know, just really want to, oh, and George, sorry, jeez. Yeah, thank you so much for your help and taking a risk on me. And I want to give a big shout out to all the blue collar workers of USC, except the police. They don't do anything, they only hurt. Okay, yeah, we can move on to the next one. You know, like I said in my thank yous, like I'm always going to read philosophy, and I love it, but I always had a sort of issue with philosophy in the academy. I felt that it was all really circular, and it was just boring in a way. And I felt that if I was going to be an academic or sort of embody this like identity of presenting ideas, I wanted it to be actually provocative and engaging. And yeah, it kind of led me to, and that coupled with an interest in anarchist theory, political theory, it led me to present these two papers at the two Mellon Mays Western Regional Conferences that I was able to attend. And the first one is Catch a Fire Towards the Black Anarchism. And it's really sort of attempting to reconcile whether you can study anarchist theory within the university. And, you know, I mean it in like a sense, like, is it ethical to study anarchism within the university? Or is there a sort of irony or something that cannot be reconciled if with anarchism within a university? So, because, you know, if we're academics and we're sort of tasked with creating raw knowledge or taking raw knowledge and putting it into a sort of commodified context where people could consume it, how is anarchist study, which is supposed to be free, spontaneous, speculative, and in its own way criminal, supposed to be held within the university? And, you know, I think we aren't doing ourselves any favors by viewing the university as a sort of factory of knowledge where knowledge is coming out. If anything, we should see the university as a government or a small city, because the university is, like, in its own way, simultaneously embodying the boss, it's embodying the police officer, it's embodying the landlord, the person who gives you debt, the politician, and all these figureheads in our lives are essentially there to limit our freedoms, or at least, you know, that's the sort of anarchist way of looking at it. So, you know, I presented the tension and not necessarily the reconciliation of study between anarchism and the university, but the next paper I presented, which was a lot more focused, was essentially in preparation to talk to professors Fred Moten and Stefan O'Harney, who wrote one of the great, you know, sort of books of our time called The Undercommons. You know, I mean, if I could describe what they write about in that book, I would say that it's a sort of poetic anarchism, which, yeah, I don't know, it's really hard to describe. They talk about a lot of things. They talk about Blackness, they talk about politics, and, you know, and I guess the most popular thing of that book is their work on the university. So, and it was also written in response to the university last words. And this one I sort of took for granted that, or I didn't really feel like arguing that the university was illegitimate. I mean, I just posed this question to anyone who listened to to the presentation, and now I present it to you. And this is a sort of Chomskyan, or from Noam Chomsky, a proviso where you imagine every single relationship you have in your life. Family members, your loved ones, your boss, your sort of local, state government, federal government, and you have to ask yourself, do these people have the moral authority to levy these rules against me? And oftentimes, I just think, or oftentimes for me, I don't think these powers or entities have moral authority or any kind of authority to levy these rules against us. And I think, that's pretty much what I say about the academy. The academy does not have, the professors, the administration do not hold the authority to levy these rules against us. And, and I say, as the sort of prodigal Black and brown children that we are, we're kind of straddling the fence of insurrection and sort of joining the institution. And we can't be within the undercommons, which is the idea that you're in the university but not of the university. You're taking things from the university, but you're not really shouldering all the sort of pomp and capitalist and neoliberal identity politics of the university. And I can't, and I'm saying now that especially now with COVID, we can't do that anymore. We're sort of tasked with really confronting what it means to be an academic in 2020, 2021, and essentially leaving the academy needs to be something that we think about very seriously. And I don't know how much time I have, but I had the presentation and I talked to Fred and Stefano a few days afterwards. And the whole reason why I wanted to talk to them was to ask Fred in particular, because he's he got a MacArthur Genius Award, and he's just a brilliant guy. Everyone loves him, but he's a professor, and he says all these things about the academy, saying how we need to abolish it, this, and that. And so I asked him, what are we supposed to do? What can we do as people who are in the academy but want to leave or have serious issues with it? And Fred essentially said, well, this is what I'm good at, and this is what pays the bills, and obviously that's fine. I mean, I guess police have jobs and that pays their bills, but it's like, it was kind of a hand-wringing gesture, and I was completely offended by it, and sort of realized that maybe now we have left the period of the undercommons and their sort of idea of critiquing the academy, and perhaps we're in something completely different and something new that we need to, as the youth, need to sort of trailblaze ourselves. So, I think that it's not a crazy idea to think that maybe we need to leave the academy, and that, anarchist study cannot be held within the academy. So at the end of the paper, I offered a couple of institutions that are actually, in a way, sort of embodying anarchist study within the university. In particular, I love Unitiera in Oaxaca. They're one of the great academic institutions that aren't really academics. And, so anyways, if you could go to the next slide. After I graduated and, after the presentations, it's been about 5 or 6 months since I graduated. So I've been in, I guess I've seen what it's like on the outside, and I don't really have a direct sort of pathway to go back to school. I didn't write a thesis because I was essentially priced out. The university sort of stripped my funding, and I didn't want to go into more debt. So I made the choice I'd rather be saddled with less debt than have more debt and have to go to school in 2 years in order to have the debt be relieved. So I formed a collective of individuals called Maroon University, and I think we're actually going to change it because I just sort of thought about it randomly, and I'm happy that people are engaging with it in such a way that they're making it their own. And yeah, it's a collective of individuals inside and outside the academy who have varying degrees of relationship to the academy. essentially coming together to attempt to visualize and understand and bring to life alternate forms of higher education. And, you know, we're in communication with Unitiera, we're in communication with a lot of other academics who are not affiliated with the university. So if you're interested, please let me know. You don't have to be an academic. You don't have to ever spend a day in school. It's like meant for everyone. So yeah, if you're interested, please just DM me privately. Can I have the next slide? I think this is it. I'll wrap it up after this. I mean, if I ever go back to school, or if I'm interested in school again, you know, I would either study like what I've been talking about now, alternate forms of higher education, which is sort of symbolized on the left. I love, or the photo on your right, I mean, which is a photo of Gordon Matta Clark's work, which is an architecture, and I kind of view that as like the sort of visual representation of what I believe with the university. It's like we need to tear it down, but there's still going to be something left, and we need to work with what we have. And if I go straight up philosophy, and it doesn't sound like I've talked a lot of philosophy at this point, and I guess that's intentional because I want to engage everyone and not talk esoteric, you know, weird esoteric, you know, far out ideas. I would like to study the work of Miguel de Unamuno, who was a Spanish philosopher that I sincerely think solved most of philosophy. And I love him very much. And maybe it's because I can read in Spanish. I read some of his work in Spanish, and I think that's sort of understood. You're supposed to be able to read the work of the native languages of the philosophers you study. So yeah, he's kind of an existentialist Christian philosopher, and I really love that stuff. Him and Kierkegaard and all the existentialists. So yeah, that's pretty much it. You know, I want to thank you all again. It's quite an honor to be on a panel with such incredible thinkers, and I hope you all stay safe, and I'll see you soon.
Thanks so much, Akande, and I look forward to our next check-in soon. And I know whatever it is you decide to do, you're going to do something extremely profound in life and world-changing. So I'm really excited to be part of this journey with you too. So thanks, and I'm looking forward to seeing you soon now that you're coming back to LA. And now we'll have Isis. And Isis, I think you're going to be sharing your own screen, right?
Yes, please. Do I have access to that?
Yeah, you have access. Go ahead.
Sorry. Okay, yeah. Let me share sound, share screen, share, and then let's present. Okay. Hi, everyone. So my name is Isis, and my research has been on Latin ska, performative identity across the US-Mexico border, and just shout out to Dr. Scott Spencer for coming up with that great title. So I came into this research basically wanting to find out more about this scene, which has had like a huge impact on my life and my parents' life, because they've been involved in the scene since like it started in the late 90s. And so I've been involved in it since basically birth. So I came in with very like vague general questions, just trying to find out what are some of the major aspects. How does it aid in identity formation? How does music connect people? And how does this play into the larger history of Los Angeles and Mexico? So just to give some background, so ska is a music scene. It started in Jamaica in its first wave, then it went over to Britain in its second wave, and then over to the US in its third wave. And then that's sort of when Latin ska came into play. And it became really popular in both Mexico and LA, predominantly. I mean, within Los Angeles, it predominantly became popular in working class communities of color. So we're talking about like South Central, Boyle Heights, East LA, Linwood, Southgate, Huntington Park. And these are still some of the cities where it's like really popular. That's actually a picture of the Allen Theater in Southgate, where they used to host a ton of like ska concerts. And then in the early days, early ska bands in LA were primarily composed of Chicanxes. And there was this separation of Chicanxes and newly arrived Mexican immigrants, which came as a result of multiple like historical events. A lot of it had to do with like gang culture. There was the exclusion of Mexican immigrants from Chicanx gang culture. And so Mexicans, for the most part, had to take part in the rock urbano scene instead of the Latin ska scene. And rock urbano is this music which is a reinterpretation of blues rock, and it's heavily influenced by different bands like Led Zeppelin and Status Quo. And ska really didn't really become inclusive of Mexican immigrants until this really influential band called Chincharinches. And a lot of the reason why it sort of opened the gates for Mexican immigrants was a result of their use of Chilango or Capitalino slang, which is slang popularized in the Federal District of Mexico, which is now just known as Mexico City. And so one of the major aspects of the scene is this heavy politicization of it. So the scene has been heavily influenced by different major historical events. One of these was in Mexico, and that is the rise of the EZLN in Chiapas, which is the Zapatista movement, which happened in 1994. And that was a direct result of the enactment of NAFTA. And so in LA and Mexico, there were tons of different events being held to raise awareness about this. And this also happened during the Prop 187 enactment, which was a proposition that aimed to criminalize Mexican immigrants in California. And it was heavily endorsed by then Governor of California, Pete Wilson. It was very controversial. So within the scene, this had a huge influence on the mentalities of people in the scene and also the different events which were being held within the scene. To the right, you can see there's this flyer for Maldita Vecindad, which is a rock en español band. And this flyer is courtesy of Rock Archivo de LA. Shout out Professor Leal, who is here today. And you can see they're holding a concert to try to raise awareness for Prop 187. And then the scene became really, really political once again during the rise of Donald Trump and Trumpism. It was very common during concerts for bands to give really long discourses about Trump and the effect that he had on America. And then again, you could see this politicization during BLM protests, which started to happen in the summer of 2020 as a response to the murder of George Floyd. There was this really, cool, I think it was very cool protest or march, which was held. And it was Ska Against Racism, which was organized by a member of the scene, Maggie Santiago. And you could see they have various signs and posters, which have Ska Against Racism or Rudy's for Unity, which Rudy is a slang term, which is used to describe members of the second wave of the scene, like a rude boy or Rudy. So yeah. And then I really want to go into the aesthetics of the scene. So here are some images to the left of my parents in the 90s. This is the late 90s. That's my dad and my uncle, top left image right there. You could see my dad in the Misfits t-shirt, my uncle in the DRI shirt, and then my dad once again on the bottom image in the all white. And then I just really wanted to compare that to more recent images. These on the right were taken during the 2018 Ska Wars Music Festival, which I guess up until the pandemic took place every year at Plaza de la Raza, which is in Lincoln Park. And yeah, so you can see there's still that really heavy punk influence. In the past, they used to have a lot of rock urbano influence, but that's not really as prominent anymore. And then on the right, I really like this image, this shirt, which is the Panteon t-shirt, and it's sort of a play on the really iconic Ramones logo. So again, just highlighting that combination of all these different genres in the scene. My parents. And then another really big aspect of the scene is transnationalism. So because many members of the scene are Mexican immigrants, they've faced deportation, immigration, things like this. A lot of thoughts and ideas are spread across borders, specifically the Mexico and US border. So ska itself is an inherently transnational genre. It was very heavily influenced in Jamaica by Jamaican traditional music like mento music, and then popular music in the US at the time, which was rock and R&B. So from the beginning, it's been very transnational. Now you can see a lot of influence musically. You can see a combination of like traditional Latin music, like salsa and cumbia, combined with punk, hardcore, ska, rocksteady, all the genres. And I think something that really took hold after this combination was the themes in the music, which tend to deal now very heavily with Mexican and American politics, injustices, things like this. And then I just wanted to share this example with you guys because it feels weird to talk about music and not really show music. So this is an example that happened in 2019. This is a band called La Resistencia, which is from LA. They were founded in LA. However, their lead singer a few years back had to move to Mexico. He was originally from Mexico, so he had to go back. And they had sort of been in a hiatus because their lead singer hasn't been in the US for a long time. However, in 2019, they were able to find a way to bridge the borders, and they basically gave a live performance. They were able to Skype in their lead singer and they projected his image onto this giant screen. So hopefully you guys are able to hear this. So again, and then, so you can see there's the mosh pit happening, which is very characteristic of the Latin ska scene. It's a skanking pit, so it's a bit different than like a traditional punk pit or a hardcore pit, where people are skanking, which is a traditional Jamaican first wave dance. And again, I thought it was very interesting how they were able to, go across borders. And that's even something which you could see in the screen, which is projected on the sides of each screen. There's this the Resistencia logo, which says Sin Fronteras, which in English translates to without borders. And yeah, so that was a very abridged version of my research and presentation that I've been doing for a couple semesters at this point. And I just wanted to give a quick thank you to my family, first of all. It's weird presenting this to them because, I mean, this is their life and I'm basically just telling them about their life. So this is my mom up here. These are my parents at a show in '97. This is me and all my family and their friends. And then this is me and my boyfriend. So shout out to everyone for being very supportive of me for my entire college career. They're being silly over here. And then also just a quick shout out to my mentor, Dr. Scott Spencer, who, I mean, had it not been for that class that I took in 2018, World Music, I wouldn't even know that this was a possibility to even research. So thank you to Scott Spencer. And then thank you to Jorge Leal, who, also heavily influenced me in wanting to pursue my research, who's also here and whose own research has also had a really heavy impact on my research. Thank you to everyone in Mellon. Thank you, Dr. George Sanchez, Disha, Cassandra as well. You guys have been very helpful throughout my entire time at Mellon. My cohort, everyone, shout out you guys. You guys are amazing. And yeah. Let me stop share.
Thanks so much, Isis. I love how your research and, just from day one, even in your interview, it's been such a family affair. I love it. I love it so much.
Yes. My parents are my #1 interlocutors. Thank you guys.
I still remember George and I were like, well, why don't you interview your parents?
Yes. Heavy influence on my work.
So amazing. So proud of you. So now we'll move on to last but not least, Madi. And I think Madi's going to be sharing her own screen too. Awesome.
Hi, everyone. Sorry, let me just set my screen up. Also, my computer's breathing heavy at this point, so hopefully you can all hear me. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mari. The title of my presentation is a Spanish word, predispuesto. When coming up as a presentation, I think this is the one keyword that not only stuck and came from my interviews, but also is applicable to like my personal trajectory at USC. For those who are not familiar with the word, it's essentially, you can find it on the screen, but I'm personally going to read the Spanish meaning of it. It's an adjective, and it means que se encuentra posicionado a favor o en contra de una persona o cosa con anterioridad a un suceso. Synonyms to it are inclinado, determinado, and predeterminado. And then I did my best to translate it to English. But again, this word in itself came from my interview with Rebecca, who's a 52-year-old woman native of my neighborhood. And moving forward, what I am going to talk about today kind of follows what everyone else has been doing. I'm going to do a brief introduction on myself, talk about the impact and the Mellon Mays Foundation had on me, then discuss how that was impacted by COVID, and not just how it was impacted, but the redirection that I received from COVID. In addition to that, I'll discuss my senior project, my lessons and future plans, and my gratitude. Okay, so for those of you that don't know me, my name is Mari. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I am an American Studies and Sociology double major. I'm from Eastside, Denver, Colorado. Maybe you know it as Cole, but it's a community that's heavily gentrified. It's also an industrial community, so it's a community that's impacted by environmental racism. And the cannabis industry was crucial in shaping the demographics of that area in the last 10 years. I'm one of 8 siblings. I come from a family of educators. So needless to say, Mellon Mays holds a special meaning to me. I also attended private high school where I benefited from many resources. And I think that's something that I always want to acknowledge, just because it heavily impacted my adjustment to USC. Okay, moving forward, if I can move my slide. Oh, let's skip the lot. Let's see. Our Wi-Fi has also been acting up. There's a lot of us on it, so my apologies in advance. Okay, so my experience at USC. I think I'm very fortunate in that I've had a lot of communities and I've been very involved on campus. I don't usually like to talk about my involvement on campus because I think that's why we have resumes. But I'm learning to also be very proud of the things that I do accomplish. So that's kind of why I'm including it. And also just, I think that everything that I've done has been very intentional. It has never been for a resume. I think that's something that we kind of learn at USC, or at least we're taught in a very like capitalistic society that, you know, to do things not necessarily out of intention, but out of benefit. But my communities at USC are El Sol y la Luna, which is a Latinx floor at USC. So from my freshman year, from the moment I moved in, I had a community. I think Suli's on the call. But, you know, from move-in day, I walked into the wrong room. So, you know, I already had my wrong, you know, the wrong step through the door, but I walked into the wrong dorm. I met Suli, and we've been friends since. So I'm very thankful for Sol y la Luna for giving me a lot of beautiful chosen family members that I have now. LSA, which is the Latinx Student Assembly on campus. That's also part of USG. So I am involved in undergraduate student government, campus activities, which was my job. my first job. It was actually my first office job, and that was just a very transformative experience for me. The Career Center, which I'm now employed at, like I mentioned, Mellon Mays, my community here. Mellon Mays was very impactful for me in terms of research. I never saw myself as someone who enjoyed sharing my thoughts, who enjoyed sharing my writing, who enjoyed presenting. But through Mellon, it's something that I've become extremely confident in. And through specifically Dr. Alyssa Sanchez, you are my writing 340 professor. You introduced me to Mellon, and I'm very thankful for that. I also found the community through study abroad. I studied immigrant communities in Paris in 2019. Sea Hope, which is a nonprofit based in Santa Monica that I do a lot of work with. Kappa Delta Chi, which is my sorority. It's a multicultural community service-based org. The Boyle Heights Museum, which again, it's not connected to Mellon Mays, but I learned about it through Dr. Sanchez. And I've been able to be in a lot of settings where I'm inspired by the people around me and the work that they're doing. And just favorite courses for the newer cohorts or just people on the call. I really recommend French 290, AMST 389, which is carceral geographies and aligns with my research. SOCI 356, any GSOM 120. I am specifically Borderland Encounters, Haiti and the Dominican Republic, Astronomy 200, and History 368. Moving forward, how Mellon Mays impacted me. I actually joined as a sophomore, so that was 2019, a while back. And ever since the informational dinner, I was very impacted, very moved. It's very rare for me to feel that way, that there's something that I need in my life. And that's really how I felt about this fellowship. Never thought I'd get it, but I was accepted. I still remember my interview and thinking how awful I did, but you know, something in that interview got me here. So I'm thankful for that. Really soon after the wheel started spinning, that summer, I was in New York City attending national conferences that most people attend until they're grad students presenting their own research. In that setting, I was able to connect with lots of PhD students and see research presented from people who are closer to my age, but also people who are doing a lot of unique and intentional work. Soon after that fall, I also had a very busy semester due to Mellon. I attended a regional conference in Seattle, the Boyle Heights Museum. I had a conference with them in Greensboro, North Carolina, and then the ASA conference in Honolulu, Hawaii. And that was all in the span of a month, where I was just in settings with different professors, different PhD students, and learning about what it is that matters to people and how it is that they're executing that. So that was a really important semester for me. And then spring 2020, this, I would say, provided lots of redirection for me. I had been accepted into French 309, which is another Maymester, and my research proposal for it, which looks at how the carceral state functions in Senegal, awarded me the African Student Fund. And that would mean that I was supposed to be doing research that summer in Senegal for a month. But as a result of COVID, that was not a possibility. And that leads me to my next slide. And these are just images of Hawaii. That's me and Dr. Kelly Lyle Hernandez. And it was just something that was really crazy to me, to be able to read books and meet the people behind it and have conversations with them. And, you know, the moment I would mention who my mentor was or what I was looking at, or that I was a part of Mellon, for them to take me seriously, I think was really impactful. So life after COVID, like I mentioned, my summer research plans obviously were not going to work out. So I instead stayed in LA I completed a digital humanities course and worked for the Borough Heights Museum. This has been a very transformative time in my life in terms of thinking of what my values and beliefs are, how I fit in academia. Much like some people have said in the past, I don't necessarily see myself fitting that mold of people that know that they want to go into academia from the beginning. I feel like for me, kind of like Rosa said, it was a struggle. It was a struggle to accept the fact that there was a certain way that academia worked. And, you know, that I don't necessarily fit, you know, the mold, like I mentioned. But nonetheless, I want to be a part of it. I think it's important to have people that don't necessarily fit that mold. So for me, that summer was spent learning what the literature is on my research interest, kind of understanding how research works, how can I make research more engaging with participants. And yeah, moving on into fall 2020, I made the brave decision for me not to apply to a PhD program. I always am someone who sticks to the plan. I'm given a plan and I'll stick to it. So for me, this was a really hard decision to make. But I knew in terms of like where I was at in that moment, that was not the healthiest choice for me to make. So instead I considered other alternatives, which was the workforce. So in spring 2021, I actually took a break and I returned home. I returned to my community. Like I mentioned, I'm from Eastside, Denver. So I was there and that gave me the inspiration to pick up my senior project fully and immerse myself completely in it. I was under the weekly guidance of Dr. Sotelo, who's in the sociology department. And I also secured 2 job offers in a limited job market. I think that's very important. And both my job offers connect to my research interest. So I know I've talked a lot, but my senior project, again, the title Predispuesto comes from it. This is an image of a convenience store. I actually live 2 blocks away from it. But if you can see in the background, that's a Purina dog shell factory. So my research takes place specifically in Northeast Denver, specifically in the Cole, Swansea, Elyria neighborhoods of that part of Denver. That part of Denver has historically been a Black neighborhood. In the early 19th century, it was referred to as the Harlem of the West. And recently it's been mostly immigrants arriving from Mexico and Central America. But again, it's a working class community. The research question I intend to investigate with this research project, and this research project was actually submitted to the sociology department, which has allowed me to graduate with honors in that department. And the question is, how do women of color, relatives, educators, or social workers resist the effects of the carceral state on youth of color through their everyday interactions? I specifically look at everyday interactions because I find that when we're having larger discussions around the carceral state, we tend to focus on political and larger movements. But I don't think that every political and larger social movement is accessible to all, especially because we must consider the resources that it's grounded on. So I specifically look at everyday interactions. And with my research, I also acknowledge the fact that women of color are not just people who are protect or interrupt or maybe enable the carceral state. They're also women. They're also people directly affected by it. Women of color account for the fastest growing sector of incarcerated women. And that's something that not many people discuss. So I just want to acknowledge that too. But in terms of the significance of this research question, the reason I focus on this is because estimates suggest that outside of routine traffic stops, about 5.5 million people are stopped by police every year. These interactions don't always result in being arrested or in a fine. So essentially they're not being recorded. They're not being accounted for. So no one really knows what takes place during these interactions. But as a sociologist, I think this is a period of where a lot of socialization takes place. And I think that's super important to not just the mental health or the well-being, but the understanding that youth of color and their woman relatives develop. So the research methods that I employ are grounded theory. I was able to conduct 9 interviews over Zoom through snowball sampling. Like I mentioned, this is a neighborhood that I belong to. So for me, it was very easy to just talk to friends and then be referred to other people. But within this interview, I interviewed 3 criminalized youth, 6 women. One is a mother, 2 are sisters, 1 is a teacher, 1 is a resident who now studies at NYU, and the other is a social worker. The ways that I was supported, I think I couldn't have done this without my mentor at all. She really helped me hold myself accountable. This was a thing of weekly meetings, a thing of her asking me to reflect and turn something in for my literature review. Especially during a pandemic, it's so easy to lose sight of your work and your productivity. But she's really someone who pushed me, but also was very gentle with me and understanding. In terms of Mellon Mays and the support I received, I was able to pay my interviews using my summer stipend, which I think is really important. Again, like a lot of my colleagues, I think ethics is at the root of what I want to pursue. So it was really important for me to monetarily compensate my interviewees. And then moving forward, these are just a few quotes. As a matter of fact, I did turn in my thesis, but it's something that I intend to work on continuously because it's something that I care about. To me, it's more than just submitting a thesis. It's being able to record my community, especially like I mentioned, my community is heavily gentrified at the moment. So it's a history that I want to make sure isn't forgotten. And as someone in academia, I think I hold a special privilege in making sure that that somehow is archived. But these are just a few examples. So a theme I saw was that of identity construction and place and that relationship. So Simone Marie writes, says, the Eastside is one of the most diverse places in Denver. I'm on the north of the Eastside, but I'm not in the 30s yet. And so it gets more diverse the deeper you get into the Eastside. And to give you an idea, I live on 37th, and that's a major street in Eastside Denver that a lot of people identify with. So moving forward, while there's people that find a great sense of pride in being from Eastside Denver, it's also a theme. It's also a thing where a lot of people know that they're very proud to be from somewhere, but doesn't necessarily mean that they love it. So for instance, Leonardo writes, I asked him, the question was, what do you like and what do you not like about Eastside Denver? And I said, is there anything you like? Because he wasn't really giving me things he liked. And he said, quote unquote, hell no, there's nothing normal about growing up in this neighborhood. And a lot of these conversations are very informal because I do induct platicas, which is a method where it's more of intimate conversations in which not only do you listen, but you respond as if it were a normal conversation, which I think interviews should be. And he said, there's nothing normal about growing up in this neighborhood, like selling drugs at 14. I then asked about, in my interview guides were very much accustomed to every person that I was interviewing for the most part. And I asked him about his first recollection of a cop. And he actually mentions that the first cop he can recall, he met at a public space. St. Charles is a recreation center. Bruce Randolph is the community high school. But the cop he met actually grew up in the community. He was always a little chicken head, which is a slur for a rival gang member. And he was always harder on us and would want to fuck with us. So the recreation of this violence isn't, I think we tend to think about police in a higher light than we probably should. Like Leonardo mentions, police are also prejudiced, and something as simple as what street you grew up on could harm you before the police. I also have, this is where my title comes from, but how your immigrant status affects your understanding of police brutality. So over the summer, something very common in Spanish and Latinx media outlets was the portrayal of the Black Lives Matter protest as in a negative light. So terms as looting, images that maybe weren't the most appropriate for what was actually happening were used. So I interviewed Rebecca, who's 52 years old, and she's the mother of one of the criminalized youth that I interviewed. But her understandings, I think, was really impactful. She says, policías que son de origen hispanos, tal vez por hecho que sean policía o no sé, también no son buenas personas. Entonces ya está predispuesto que te van a tratar mal y te van a tratar de fregar. Yo me imagino que contra los morenos, por lo que veo en la televisión, están en la misma situación que nosotros. Ellos piensan exactamente igual y a lo mejor es peor para ellos. De todas maneras, no está bien para los que estamos del lado de minorías. So for someone who doesn't really have an interaction, she's a Latina with close proximity to whiteness who doesn't really have interaction with the Black community. And so for her to understand that, you know, she experiences police brutality, and from what she sees on TV, she imagines that it's worse for Black people. So saying that regardless of the cop's race, you're still predisposed to police brutality, regardless of the race of the cop, as long as you're a minority yourself. So I thought that was really important, speaking, because we also spoke about her understanding of police growing up in Mexico, where to her, they weren't really around. They were just, you know, at the station. Sometimes you'd see them. So that was really impactful for me. And that's something that I want to continue to dive into with my next interviews. I also have another quote from Simone Marie, which I think is really important, and I do want to share, and another one from Ella. But because of time, and because I do want to respect everyone's time, I'm just going to move forward to my future plans. As of right now, I am on track to be an LAUSD high school teacher. I'll specifically be working with special ed education. And that's my goal right now, is to improve myself, to be a better educator. My second goal is to pursue my academic and personal interests more in depth now that I have more flexibility. I think at USC, you're assigned a ton of homework, a ton of reading. The norm is to be involved in a ton of extracurriculars. So to finally be able to have breathing space to pursue my interests, and not just personal, but academic, I think it's crucial to the development of who I want to be as an educator. In terms of lessons, I think it's important to pour into my own cup before pouring into that of others, as well as establishing boundaries, saying no. I think that's especially important in academia. Second, learning and teaching should be done so with a holistic approach and more intentionally. I personally would like to center mental health, wellness, and accessibility in everything that I do. So learning new ways to do that. I'm grateful for a lot of people, as you can tell in this list. But first and foremost, my parents and my siblings, my nieces and nephew, my granny and my Nina, Hermes and Nina, who are my pets, my neighborhood, Professor Pierrette Sotelo, Professor George Sanchez, Professor Elisa Sanchez Disha, my roommates, my sorority sisters, the Boyle Heights team, and the Boyle Heights community. I don't think the work that we do would be possible without that community. My Mellon Mays community, especially my own cohort, and Lupe and Sam and Kat and Kathy and Cassandra, who were super important they were my first role models within Mellon Mays, to say the least. My friends for being as present as it can be during these times. And myself, I like to thank myself too, because I did it. So thank you so much for your time. Sorry you had to overstay the intended time.
Mari, don't be sorry at all. And I just want to say you are wise beyond your years. And I am extremely proud of you. And I'm so happy you're going to be a teacher to, you know, pass on your own knowledge and wisdom that you've gained these past 4 years. And you're absolutely incredible, and we're really proud of you. So congratulations again. So with that, friends, family, mentors, if we can use the rest of our time together to go ahead and share your words and your congratulations for our graduating seniors. You can go ahead and raise your hand, or just use the chat, and we can hear from a few folks. Go ahead, Dr. Spencer.
Thank you so much. I'm so proud of all of you. This is such an incredible thing. There have been so many comments about, I don't see myself as a faculty. I don't see a position for myself in institutions in future. I love the idea that you're going to be in the positions to go in and change this stuff so that you can reform these institutions in the images that you want them to be and that we need you to be. So I'm so looking forward to the future. I woke up in a bad mood today. It's gone now. I'm so happy.
Thank you. Dr. McHugh?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, well, yeah, amazing. This has been like so, I don't know, I really didn't realize what an amazing, I've actually got friends who are faculty now, various places, who were part of this program, you know, in the past. But yeah, this has really blown my mind how, just how interesting it is and how impressive and how much different work everyone's doing. And thank you to Disha and George for running this as well. I can see that's a lot of work, but yeah, so yeah, massive congratulations to everyone, and especially to Kim there, good luck in the future. And everyone stay in touch with everyone at USC, and stay in touch with your mentors. They do really like to hear what people are up to. They genuinely do want to hear from you in the future. So yeah, so well done, everyone.
Thank you so much. Professor Leal?
Hello, everyone. Well, I think I'm just gonna repeat what everybody else said, but I mean, for me, it's been such an honor to see Mari, Isis, Rosa, and others that I have been able to see their development, and today learn so much from their presentations and how their work have evolved. So definitely looking forward to their work within the academic spaces, beyond the academic spaces, and when you come back and continue to do this work. So congratulations to the families too, and also Disha and George for really ushering year after year. I mean, I've been seeing two different generations of Mellon Mays Fellows, and it's just amazing to see their growth. So congratulations to everyone.
Any of you have any words for each other? Anybody else on this call? I don't want to cut anybody's time short. So, George, you have anything you want to say?
I have lots to say, but if other people want to speak, just please raise your hand. I wanted to say that this group is particularly special, this group that's graduating, because most of their time has been under COVID. A few of them that started as sophomores had a brief semester where we were together, and then we went into COVID. And I just say that doing research and trying to become a scholar under these conditions is pretty outrageous, right? So much of our program is based on human connection and trying to connect with scholars and with each other, and having to do this in this format has been really tough. And so I want to just to acknowledge how much work it took to do the research that each of these students presented. This was not easy, and it's not easy in the best of times. In these times, it was so hard. So I just want to really acknowledge that and just say how proud I am of each of you for what you were able to accomplish, how you were able to overcome so many different restrictions on what we could do, and how, the other piece that I'll add is that at USC, undergraduate research is not often valued. Not a lot of our students do research. People are much more on professional tracks. but the ability to step back and to do work that you truly love, that is your work, to take hold of it and to try to do it is such an important part, I think, of everybody's educational experience. And that's another reason that I'm proud of you. Each of you had your own perspectives, and you were able to really reflect that in the work that you've done. So I just really, I'm looking forward to see what each of you do in your own distinctive futures. And just to know that we in this program will always be proud of you. Anyway, I'll just stop there. Anything else, Disha?
Nothing else, unless anybody else has any words to say before we go. Now's your time.
Just please come back and come back, and if you whatever you choose to apply to in the future, reach out. It can be all kinds of things, and then come back and as other cohorts look up to you, and they'll continue to do that. So look forward to not saying goodbye, but seeing you again.
Well said, Elisa. Yes, I couldn't emphasize that more. Like, please stay in touch. Akande, please start checking your USC email. But now that I have your other email, I can email you on that. But all of you, if there's going to be another email that you prefer to be contacted on, just please, please, please let me know, especially for those of you that are going on to PhD programs and are going to be requesting potential loan repayments. Just email it to me. I see some of you putting it in the chat. Just send it to me in an email, please. That way it doesn't get lost.
If I can, Elisa, excuse me, Disha, if I could say one last thing. I want to also thank the mentors who are here. I can't tell you how impactful you have been in their lives. You saw some of that in their presentations, but what we hear from them on a daily, weekly basis is that, it took your course, it took your approach, it took your sticking with them as they tried to figure out how to do their research that really allowed them to flourish in the way that they have. And so again, we don't have a lot of time to celebrate the mentorship that each of you have shown, but I really want to emphasize that because I think it is so important to the development of young scholars. And again, it's not something common at USC. So the fact that you each have taken time and shown the energy and come today, I just want to really applaud you for that additional work. So thank you so much.
Yes, thank you to our mentors. None of this would be possible without your inspiration. And just remember, seniors, that you're going to be this for somebody too one day, and never forget that. And like I think Elisa said, the younger cohorts definitely look up to you all, and we'll definitely be tapping into your wisdom and knowledge and experiences to kind of guide our younger cohorts as we move along. And I really wish I could have met you all in person and we could be here together right now and I could give you all hugs. I can't believe I'm going through another graduation, not meeting the little buds that I've kind of helped to water, but I cannot wait to meet you all eventually and just continue to see what you all do. So keep in touch, check your emails, and we'll always be here no matter what. So you can always find us at USC Mellon. So with that, everybody enjoy the rest of your Wednesday. And for those of you that are getting to walk at graduation, enjoy that, savor every moment, and give your families chosen in blood just hug and love and appreciation for your support. We're just really, really proud of you all.
Congratulations.
Thank you.